There is a man sitting in a military hospital who has just been told his fingers are too damaged to save. The doctor says they need to come off. The man disagrees, so he reaches down, takes two of his own fingers between his teeth, and bites them off himself. When the doctor still won't remove the last one, the man pulls it off with his bare hand. This is not the strangest thing that will happen to this man. It is not even in the top 5. His name is Adrian Carton de Wiart, and over the course of 2 world wars he will lose an eye, lose a hand, get shot in the skull, the face, the ankle, the hip, the leg, and the ear, survive a plane crash into the sea, survive a second plane crash in the desert, escape from a prisoner of war camp at the age of 61 by tunneling out disguised as a peasant, and, when a British general finally asked him to describe the war, apparently he said he'd enjoyed it. Carton de Wiart was born in Brussels in 1880. Belgian father, Irish mother, raised partly in Cairo, educated in England. Nothing about his early life predicts what's coming. He goes to Oxford. He does not finish. Instead, in 1900, he lies about his age and his nationality, invents a fake name, and sails off to fight in the Boer War in South Africa. He is shot almost immediately, in the stomach and the groin, and shipped home before he's even old enough to legally be there. His father is furious. Most people would take this as a sign. Carton de Wiart takes it as a warm-up. He formally joins the British Army, and when the First World War breaks out in 1914, he's sent to Somaliland to fight tribal forces loyal to a leader the British nicknamed the Mad Mullah. It's here that he loses his eye, shot twice in the face storming a fort, one bullet taking out his eye socket. He refuses morphine. He asks for a cigarette instead. Later, fitted with a glass eye that he finds uncomfortable, he simply throws it out of a moving taxi window and wears an eye patch for the rest of his life. By 1915, he's on the Western Front, and this is where the damage really starts to accumulate. At the Battle of the Somme, he loses his left hand, mangled beyond repair. A doctor refuses to amputate 2 dangling fingers. So, as we opened with, Carton de Wiart bites them off himself. When it's finally properly removed, he requests only local anesthetic during the amputation because he doesn't trust the surgeon and wants to supervise. He is shot again, through the skull and through the ankle. He is shot through the hip, so severely that the wound never fully heals for the rest of his life. He is shot through the leg. He is shot through the ear. At one point, he pulls shell fragments out of his own body with his remaining hand because the medics are busy. He earns the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest award for bravery, for continuing to lead his men after his hand injury, at one stage reportedly pulling the pin on a grenade with his teeth because he had no hand left to do it with. By the end of the war, doctors have operated on him at least a dozen times. He later joked that hospital staff would take one look at him arriving and just start preparing the theater, because they knew what was coming. What makes this stretch of his life so strange isn't just the volume of injuries, it's that none of them seem to change his behavior at all. Officers who lose a hand are typically sent home. Carton de Wiart has his stump bandaged, has a hook fitted, and goes straight back to the front line using the hook to pull pins from grenades and to grip the reins of his horse. Soldiers under his command describe him less like a commanding officer and more like a force of nature that occasionally paused to give orders. He is fearless in a way that unsettles the men around him, walking upright through machine gun fire that has everyone else flat in the mud, seemingly under the impression that the bullets are somebody else's problem. Peace does not slow him down. In 1919, he's sent to Poland as a British military attaché, right as Poland and Soviet Russia go to war with each other. He's there for the fighting, gets shot again, because of course he does, and stays on for years afterward, eventually buying a remote estate in the Polish marshes, essentially retreating from Europe to go duck hunting and live like a country squire with one eye, one hand, and more scar tissue than most cadavers. You'd think that's the ending. A wounded war hero fades into a quiet countryside life. It is not the ending. When the Second World War breaks out in 1939, he's nearly 60 years old. The British Army sends him back into uniform anyway, first to try to help Poland. He's evacuated as the country collapses under German invasion, then to lead British forces in the Norway campaign in 1940, a chaotic, under-resourced operation that fails, though not through any lack of nerve on his part. Then, in 1941, Flying to North Africa as part of a diplomatic mission, his plane crashes into the Mediterranean off the coast of Libya. He swims to shore, 60 years old, one hand, one eye, and is promptly captured by Italian forces. He spends the next 2 years as a prisoner of war in Italy, held at a camp reserved for senior officers who kept causing problems for their captors elsewhere. He does not spend those 2 years quietly. He attempts to escape 5 separate times, at one point spending months helping dig a tunnel under the camp, then getting out disguised as an Italian peasant with his hair dyed and his eye patch removed to look less recognizable. He wanders the Italian countryside for over a week, sleeping in fields, despite speaking almost no Italian and being, by any reasonable description, one of the most conspicuous-looking men in Europe. One eye, one hand, and a limp from a hip wound that never healed. He is eventually recaptured. He is, by this point, 62 years old and reportedly already planning the next attempt. Then comes the part that sounds invented. In 1943, Italy switches sides in the war, and Carton de Wiart is released. Winston Churchill, who apparently found him too remarkable to leave in a filing cabinet, personally appoints him as his military representative to Chiang Kai-shek in China, where he spends the rest of the war advising on the fight against Japan, at an age when most men would have long since stopped being sent anywhere near a battlefield. He survives the war. He survives everything. He retires to a manor in Ireland, marries again in his 60s, and lives out a peaceful old age, dying in 1963 at the age of 83. Not from a bullet, not from a crash, not from anything dramatic at all, but simply of old age. The one outcome nobody watching his life so far would have predicted. When Evelyn Waugh, who based a character on him, was asked whether the details of Carton de Wiart's life were plausible, he reportedly said something to the effect that no novelist would dare invent a character this absurd because no editor would believe it. And that might be the most fitting epitaph available. A man too extraordinary for fiction who somehow just happened to be real.